Top of the morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. I have a wonderful and esteemed guest today, a great friend of mine, Mr. Justin Buck, Morehouse College, class of 2018, my Morehouse brother, University of Maryland, Baltimore, class of 2022, CEO and founder of Pearl Rolling Company. Welcome, Justin. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, man. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here with you. Two Morehouse men in cannabis. I think is powerful, young pioneer in the cannabis industry. So let's just get right into it, Justin. So tell me, you know, what is Pro Rolling Company? How did it come to be? And was this something that you came into Morehouse with this already on your mind and knowing that, my journey and my vision is going to end in cannabis, or is this something that developed over time? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So Pro Rolling Company is a innovative, patented rolling paper that is different than any other rolling paper on the market, and that's just because it's sealed and boded at the end, so that no cannabis falls out, and it's less messy, and it provides a little bit easier way to roll for patients, and for users who use cannabis. So, and coming into Morehouse, I definitely didn't know that that's where my trajectory was going to go. I came into Morehouse honestly, like as an athlete, so I really didn't, my whole life I was just kind of like playing sports and an active athlete and stuff like that. So I never really like used cannabis. But once I came to college, I really was just focusing on my academics. So, as I was matriculating through school, it's just cannabis was just, always around my friends, just with people that we were hanging out with and parties and stuff like that. So at first I was just using cannabis as just like a recreational thing, just occasionally. And it turned into something that a therapeutic thing for me during college.
Absolutely.
Um, so, during the business degree is a very hard degree at Morehouse, and
Yes,
it's
indeed.
it's a lot. It's very intense. So a lot of the times, as I was matriculating through school, I would use it to focus and to just calm my mind when I was studying, or even after studying, and I was just really tired and stressed. Just kind of using it to lower my stress levels, and then I kind of saw it, useful in like narrowing my focus too.
Mm.
So those are the two main things that I started using it for. And as I just continued to go through school and using cannabis, I figured out a way to make rolling a little bit easier for me.
Mm.
And in that way that I discovered to make it easier for me, turned into a business idea. And the rest is history after that, man.
Wow. So you actually, out of necessity, you created your boat system just on your own, just your own natural creativity, trying to figure out the best way for you to roll.
Right. So, I had some inspiration because, I was initially just, Googling, how to roll papers, you know what I mean? Like how to roll. So papers have always been like my choice in terms of like what I want to put my cannabis in.
Your medium.
Once I started learning more about like what the other alternatives were, and I was like, well, papers are for me. So
Right.
once papers are like thin, and they're just flat papers, and it's just like if you're not intuitive, if you don't know how to roll, it's not intuitive, is what I meant to say. So if you don't know how to do it, if you haven't been rolling for a while, it's not intuitive. So
Right.
I was Googling, going on YouTube, trying to figure out how to roll. And then I came across a certain video, actually posted by Wiz Khalifa, pretty popular video, I'm pretty sure, but where he kind of taught how you just kind of pinch the end and you twist the tail, and that was just to make it a little bit easier to roll. So I was doing that, twisting the tail, for a long time, and then I was using that, but I still noticed that even when you stuff the end, the cannabis would still fall out of the top
Right.
of the tail.
Right.
So what I did was I would just like lick the very end of the paper, and seal it so that that wouldn't happen.
Right.
So I took that initial kind of design, added a seal to it, and then that was like my design that I used personally. And then I would show my friends that as well. So I was like, yeah, this is kind of like how I do it. And then like they're like, oh, that's really, really cool. Like you added this seal to it, and
Right.
that's just like perfect. Like we really, really like that. So then they started to do it as well. And then once they started to do it, they started to show their friends and stuff. And then I was like, wait a second, what's happening here? So once I saw that, I said, yo, like I was like, this would be really, really cool if this would just come out the pack like this.
Mm.
And, um, being just kind of like somebody who wants to do as little work as possible when it comes to that. I'm like, bro, like we need to just have this come out the pack straight like that. Like, why every single time I gotta twist it, then I
Mm.
gotta seal it,
A lot of
and
work.
that, yeah, it's a lot of extra work. So, that was just my idea. Like, this needs to come out the pack just like that. And I didn't want to do it without having a patent. So I went down that road in college to actually, get a patent filed.
Oh wow! So you filed the patent while you were still in school.
Yeah, man. And it was very it was a difficult process, but
Wow.
yeah, so it was around my junior year in college was when I kind of, well, the end of my junior year in like around the summertime. And that summer was a really pivotal summer for me because I spent it in Chicago, Illinois. That during that summer, and I was in an internship out there. And during that time was when I was really kind of thinking like, okay, like this is what I want to do when I graduate,
Mm.
and I need to make sure that I have a patent. But as a college student, I didn't have the resources to actually fund a patent attorney to do this for me.
Right.
So initially, when I was in college, I just did a DIY patent application, um, and that was the start of it. And I made a few mistakes with my DIY patent application.
Mm.
And once after I graduated college, got like my signing bonus and all of that stuff, I immediately hired a patent attorney, and then that patent attorney and then ended up fixing my mistakes that I made during my original DIY patent. And then we got to a point where we were able to actually speak with the patent examiner, the person that was like looking over my application. And that's how we were able to get clarification on what needed to be fixed. And then shortly after that, everything was approved.
Nice. Nice. Wow. So, and just to circle back, you're absolutely right. The business major at Morehouse was crucial. Reason I was an English major. I enjoyed my matriculation through more. I had my difficult moments, but I was not stressing out like most of the business guys were.
Yeah, man. It was stressful, man. Like even
Oh
just
man.
down to the very last class and very last credit where I was
Right.
sweating bullets,
I
man.
remember what class it was policy. I remember.
Business policy,
Yes,
man.
I remember policy was like people were losing their hair literally. But man,
Yeah.
coming in Morehouse with the waves and the dreads and leaving out of policy with a straight bald head, you know?
Yeah, man. And it the reputation is still like that today. And it stopped business policy, is the last prerequisite
Yeah,
for the business department. And a
right.
lot of people that I know, they didn't make it. So they had to, if you didn't pass that business policy, man, you were there for another semester, not walking with your class.
Oh,
So
guaranteed.
yeah, it was serious.
Whole lot of that going on.
Yeah, yeah, man. So I just was determined not to be that. And so I was able to get out of there in four. So
Yes, to the
yeah,
young Morehouse guys watching and listening to this, use cannabis to narrow your focus and
yes.
study in the library or in whatever setting
Right,
works
man.
for you.
Yep.
And don't let policy hold you back.
Yeah,
But
man.
no, we kind of are kindred souls in that because I also came into Morehouse as an ex-athlete. I was looking forward to playing soccer, and then they ended up scrapping the program as soon as I got there.
Mm,
And so I used cannabis in high school, but I really wasn't a smoker. You know, I smoked occasionally, but I really wasn't even into it that much. It was around everywhere, especially because I was growing up in California. But
mhm.
same story, man. I was on the side of the library. Never forget it, my sophomore year, and just microdose a little bit of bud I had from earlier. And when I say it narrowed my focus, I mean it really had led me on the trajectory to where I am today.
Yeah.
Understanding how this plant can help us improve so many aspects of our life, right? So circle back. You're at Morehouse. You're doing this DIY patent. You make some mistakes. You graduate. You get some more resources. You get an attorney to get it situated. At what point in time? I want to shift gears. At what point in time was University of Maryland, Baltimore on your radar?
Mm.
And when did you say, you know what? Not only am I going to be innovative and a pioneer and create a new product to the cannabis market that does not exist, but I also want to be educated at the master's level in terms of cannabis. Let's talk about that in the program that you recently just graduated from.
Yeah, man. So that's a really actually good story because the program was first launched um, in 2019. So it was the fall of 2019 was the inaugural class. And it was like the beginning of 2019, like around like March or so, that I believe that they announced it, right? So that they announced University of Maryland, Baltimore, this is a brand new program. We're starting in the fall. So it actually might have even been in 2018 because we had to go through the application process. So it was around the time that I had just graduated from Morehouse. So like 6 or 7 months right after Morehouse, they launched this program.
Got it.
And um that so immediately like I had seen it, but then like I don't know, like 5 or 6 people that I know were like, Justin, have you heard about this? Like, Justin, this looked like you. Like, so it was just like my family and friends, honestly,
Mm,
like just knowing me personally, like knew that this was something that I would be interested in.
yes.
So
Yes.
I was, working a full-time job. And the program is part-time, so I could have done it while I was still working and everything, but I wasn't sure like if I wanted to do it. Just because there's a cannabis program and all that doesn't mean that I need to do it or it's something that I want to do. So I
Absolutely.
sat on it for a year. So I
Mhm.
just was thinking about it a lot, sitting on it, and like around the time where I left my job, I was like, now is the time for me to do this because I left my job at like literally January of 2020. Um, so I had been sitting on it for a year, and then when I was leaving my job, I just was like, now is the time for me to do this. Like, and during that time, I still hadn't had the patent approved. So the patent wasn't approved until May. No, no, I'm sorry. The patent wasn't approved until July of 2020. So
Mm,
not until like smack dab in the middle of the pandemic
wow.
was it approved. So when I was going through this process, I wasn't sure that Pearl Rolling Papers was even going to actually come to fruition
Mm,
because one, the patent had been the patent process was only supposed to take 18 months, but it had turned into something that was much longer than that because of the mistakes that I made. So
right.
I wasn't confident in the patent being approved. And then I wasn't sure how long that the Pearl Rolling Papers was going to take because I knew that getting a supplier, getting everything together for it was going to take years, right? So this was something like I want to do this now because I'm not sure if Pearl is going to happen.
Interesting.
So just because I knew I was interested in cannabis, I knew that I wanted to learn more about it on the medical side
Mhm.
because recreational was cool and everything, but I know that it helped me. And then I did some DIY research myself, and I saw that there were some medical benefits to it as well. So
Absolutely.
this was something that I was just really, really interested in. I didn't know really how I wanted to use my that degree at the time, but as I went through the program and as I started forming my own opinion about what I wanted to do, I realized what I wanted to do with the degree. But that's how it came about. I just wasn't sure about the other route that I wanted to take, and just in the same realm of cannabis, which is my passion. I was like, this is something that I know that I can turn into I can monetize sooner rather than later. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Tell us about your experience there. I mean, what were your expectations going into it? Did you think that you would come out of there a cannabis connoisseur, expert, educator, lecturer, cannabis philosopher, researcher? Like what was your expectation in comparison to now that you are a graduate, now that you are in the field of consultation and education? Did the experience at UMD match your expectations?
Yeah, it did actually. So, the great thing about it was I did my due diligence. I looked through all the courses that I was going to take,
Mm,
and then I figured out, what I was going to be able to do with that education before I, put down the money and got the, just to decide to do this. I looked through the coursework, and I just knew that this was something that is not taught, so like you have to spend hours and hours and hours of researching this type of thing because there's a lot of, false information out there
absolutely.
about, there's not research, there's not clinical trials. There's, these things don't exist. But
Absolutely.
if you go to, a university's library where they have all of these clinical trials, they have all these, meta-analysis, this real research that
Mhm.
is, backed by scientists with PhDs and clinical trials that are, gold standard and stuff like that, double placebo, all that stuff, right? So that stuff was just so eye-opening to me that, I don't think I would have never like dug that deep. So for me, it was an assistance to really just unlock the knowledge, all the knowledge that is out there in the world. And even now that I'm not in the program, I know where to look. I
Right.
know where to go to find, supplemental information that I might need when I am consulting, when I am doing those things. And the program was really, really, I think one of my favorite parts of the program was they had us do a lot of case studies about, how to do your due diligence, how to approach and actually consult. Like they taught us like step by step, like this is your process when you're talking to, potential, medical clients who might come to you for a recommendation. This is
Right.
your step by step process when a medical doctor is reaching out to you and asking you about a certain medical ailment that might be better than other treatments that are out there for medical candidates.
Right.
So that was one of the most priceless things to me were those case studies that they had us working on and that they taught us. And I got to meet the founder of the endocannabinoid, not meet him, but he gave us a lecture. The Dr. Meshulam out of Israel.
Absolutely.
He discovered the endocannabinoid system in 1995,
Hmm.
and he's still alive and doing all this work now. I believe he's in his 80s or 90s. But then we got to just have him lecture us and ask him questions.
Wow.
So those were like priceless things. Not even including just the network that I had access to. All these people are nurses or doctors, are own CBD stores, own dispensaries.
Hmm.
So all of that stuff. I think it was really really worth the time and money that I spent in that program. And now I have that wealth of knowledge and that network that I can utilize in my consulting practice now.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so powerful because it takes me back to my time 10 years ago when I was doing my master's in clinical mental health, when I was the guy spending hours upon hours doing research, searching for scholarly, peer reviewed um,
Right.
clinical research on cannabis. Um,
Mhm.
and it's hard to find if you don't know where to look, right?
Yeah.
And then, especially 10 years ago, I tell people this all the time. It's fascinating to see how much has changed in so little time. 10 years ago, there were so many subjective, well, not so many, there were millions of subjective claims of cannabis helps with post traumatic stress. It helps with my depression. It helps with my insomnia. It helps with my anxiety and all these different mental health challenges. But there was not a tremendous amount of data to support that, right? Fast forward to 2022. people have been doing these studies, they've been doing the trials, and now the data is here. And one of my questions to you is, now that you are a graduate of UMD Baltimore with a master's in cannabis therapeutics, what do you think is the future of cannabis education? Because from where I sit, I see millions of people who need this plant for various different reasons. I feel like mainstream media is now more open to spreading the message that cannabis is an option. But one thing I've noticed is that the how do I use cannabis effectively? That question is still kind of hard to answer, right? And so, what are your thoughts on just the future of cannabis education and your role in that and your vision?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think the future of cannabis education has a lot to do with my peers in my class. I
Mm,
think that everybody that graduated from that program has a responsibility now because they have a toolkit of knowledge that needs to be spread around the country and the world.
absolutely.
And so there's only about 400 of us because there's only two classes that have graduated so far.
Mm,
And I think it's really like upon us to go out there, be expert witnesses in trials, to be um, consultants and teachers. We just need to do it the right way. We need to collaborate as well. So I think that people who have that education, I don't really know any other program in the country where that is provided, but people who have this knowledge, who have this education, it's up to them to go out into the world and educate people. And my role is exactly that. So my role is to go out and educate people as accurate as possible, backed by evidence, backed by research, so that it can't be questioned, and make sure that people understand it. So I think a big thing that needs to happen for myself and people who have this knowledge is we need to take that scientific knowledge and then we need to filter it into layman terms and
yeah,
make sure people understand.
yeah,
And that's like one of the biggest things, right? So because we don't want to talk about enzymes and fatty acids and stuff like that. And people don't know what we're talking about.
right.
And so we need to just kind of take our scientific terminology and just, filter it to be useful for the person that's trying to learn this information.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And one sector I think is critical for that type of education is breaking down the science into layman's terms is the criminal justice system, right?
Mm,
When I was working as a therapist, I worked in the Cobb County Juvenile Court for some years, and it just crushed my soul when I saw these young people, some of whom would violate their probation with a positive THC urine screen, have now been transported upstate to some prison for their probation violation. Literally
mm,
sent to prison for smoking cannabis. Now, true enough, they're not supposed to be using cannabis on probation, but that's a bigger debate on why prohibition is at such a level where you could go to prison for a THC urine screen, right? And so I spent the better part of a year really, and I had to do it very delicately and very sometimes quietly, sometimes not, but I had to be very intentional and very careful um, in terms of how I educated the court on our young people are using cannabis to cope with post traumatic stress, right? Most of my clients were either perpetrators or witnesses of a violent crime, right? And so at the end of the day, we can't punish our young people for using a plant that is in fact helping them cope with trauma, right?
mm.
Trauma is what we're talking about. And fortunately, shout out to Chief Judge Vincent Crawford. He was very receptive to what I was saying. And my argument wasn't that, hey, we should just um, give these young people, because we're talking about teenagers, we should just give these young people the leeway to just smoke cannabis freely. No, what I was encouraging the court to do was let's implement a drug screening process that gives the clinicians more information, right? This positive negative urine screen is not telling a clinician anything outside of what we already know. My client smokes bud, we know that, but we want to know, what are the nanogram levels, right? Are they smoking more, are they smoking less? We need more data. And the criminal justice system is so far behind on this in terms of education, understanding the science, and understanding that this plant is not harming our community in the way that we've been told for the past 100 years.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with that, man.
And so moving forward, now you've graduated, you've got your consulting business. Let's talk about Cannabis Literacy Club and the power behind that. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what the mission is.
Yeah, yeah. So Cannabis Literacy Club is definitely a brainchild of Pearl Consulting Group and Cannabis Media Collective. So we're trying there. What we're trying to do there is just bring the type of education that I was just talking about, and bring it into onto college campuses. We all know it's no secret that college campuses, college students are those are the people that are using cannabis, well, maybe the most. And it's all over these campuses, but nobody is really educated on how, like you said, how to use it, the benefits, the risks. And one of my biggest things is using cannabis, and having an adverse reaction to another drug that you're using.
Mm,
Um,
yes,
and
talk about that, Justin. Please, yes, let's take a second.
yeah,
Talk about that.
so yeah, so that's just one of the biggest things that I think everybody needs an education on, because you might take cannabis and have a terrible experience and think, oh, cannabis might not be for me.
Mhm.
But in fact, you're on a certain medication, that is known already. Like all of the contraindications, all of the drugs that don't pair well with cannabis are out there. Like that knowledge and information is literally out there,
Right.
for people to go and read. So I think that's why, like, you have so many people, try cannabis and then they have a terrible experience and then they never use it again. But in turn, if they stop using that drug, and cannabis might be able to help them with other ailments that they might have. So
Right.
that's just a whole nother thing I could talk about, for an hour plus. But
Right. We'll
um,
save that for our next interview for sure.
yeah, yeah. So, but for the Cannabis Literacy Club, that's really like what I want to do is just educate the college students as much as possible. And then also I want to kind of create, no, not kind of, I want to create a pipeline from HBCUs to go to University of Maryland, Baltimore, and get that master's degree. So, because in this type of field, you need those letters at the end of your name. You need that degree for people to really take you seriously. You
Absolutely.
can have all the knowledge in the world, but at the end of the day, you're just another person talking about cannabis.
Absolutely.
And that could be anybody.
Absolutely.
So so I feel like it's a great opportunity for people that are interested in cannabis and educating about cannabis and then making a living doing that.
Absolutely.
So those are the main goals of the club, and we're going to start in the Atlanta University Center, and then after that, I would love to take it to other campuses, and really just want to focus on HBCUs to start.
Absolutely, man. I think the Cannabis Literacy Club has tremendous, tremendous potential. When I think back, I graduated 2005, and when I think back over 20 years ago to being on campus, I was a cannabis nerd. I'd buy a quarter ounces, some bud from my Jamaican guy. It was some of the best bud ever, but it was a little seedy, right?
Yeah.
But I noticed, well, all I need is a good 20, 30 minutes to put this under this lamp and get my tweezers, and I will take all the seeds out. And I'll have a wonderful product, right? And so
And so you would pluck the seeds out?
I would pluck the seeds out, bro.
Wow. Okay, that's
Uh,
dedication.
man, this particular strain. I mean, it smoked so good. It was lime green, like bright, bright lime green. Just smoked so good, but it was just a little seedy. And all the flower smokers know it's not the end of the world, but it's unpleasant, right?
Yeah.
To have a seed combust in your joint or
Yeah.
your blood or whatever your medium is, right? And so yeah, so I was that kind of guy. I've just been a cannabis nerd since '02, really. And
Mhm.
but to imagine if I would have had a place to go to cultivate my passion and understanding of cannabis, who knows where I would be or where you would be, right?
Right.
And so for us to create that type of organization that I'm certain will live beyond our years and empower so many people to not only just get educated, and we're not, and I think the message is clear, we're not pushing cannabis on everybody. We just want people to have the information so that they can make their own informed decision, right? Um, but to be able to create an organization where these young people can really cultivate um, their career and their understanding of cannabis, I think is huge. And I think we're going to look up years from now and see this on multiple campuses. And we have to talk about it a little bit because from where I sit, a lot of universities, and let's just call it out, predominantly white institutions, cannabis is on their radar, right? They're talking about this on campus, even at an administration level. Um, but the HBCUs, I think, are a little slow. I think FAMU and a lot of the Florida schools that are focused on agriculture and engineering, I think they're, got a step ahead. But Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Morris Brown, it's time for us to really shine the light on the cannabis industry, reduce the stigma, and like you said, create a pipeline for these young people to continue their education, and open up their career opportunities. So excited about Literacy Club, and we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. I think it's going to be something that is going to be really, really fruitful for the people that are still on the AUC campus. And I just, can't wait to just start educating people on cannabis and just start seeing like how the lives are changed and people's career trajectories because it's going to be something that people never have thought of. Like
Absolutely,
people have never thought of that they could have a career in cannabis. Like, yes, you can be a bud tender, you can,
absolutely,
do a little things here and there, but to be a like subject matter expert on cannabis, be
yes.
able to consult people, to be able to consult medical professionals, because only 9% of medical schools say anything about cannabis.
Talk
And
about it.
even those 9%, I'm not too confident that it's positive things. I think it's mostly one-sided.
Absolutely.
So there's a big gap right now, and I think that is something that people need to understand and like take advantage of that because we're still very, very early in the game in
Absolutely.
terms of people having enough knowledge where they can actually be experts on this. Um
Absolutely.
so yeah, I think it's going to be something that will change people's lives and in their careers.
100%. When I sit back and think about what you just said, that this industry is in its infancy, and when I put my futuristic hat on, and I think, where are the cannabis accountants, the designers, the marketing professionals? We talk about cultivation, the plumbers, the HVAC, the lighting, the electricians, the architects designing the new wave of grow innovation. They're all going to be coming out of Morehouse. Not all, but a tremendous amount of them are going to be coming from Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Morris Brown, Howard, Fisk. You name a black college, they're going to be coming out of there, and they need a space to cultivate their skill set. Um, and it's just powerful, man. So listen, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I really want to just tee up our next interview on medications that do not pair well with cannabis. I think that's huge. You
Yeah,
know, I think that's huge, especially in this era that we're in now, where, as you know, our medical professionals are quick to push a pill on patients, right? And then when you take that pill, there's a side effect for that. So then you need a pill for the side effect, and then there's a side effect for that. You need a pill for the side effect, right? And then if you smoke some cannabis, you might have an adverse reaction to any number of medications that you're taking. I think it's critical for citizens and just the average Joe to know, what medication should I not be using, in conjunction with my cannabis. So let me know when we can put that together. I think that'll be some super, super important information that
yeah.
everybody needs to hear.
Yeah, and it's not just cannabis; it's CBD as well. So It's
Mm,
cannabis and CBD. Like even CBD, it has CBD is really, really good for a lot of different things as well.
yeah.
Anti-inflammatory,
Mhm,
anti-anxiety.
mhm,
Honestly, doing looking at the research, um, if you have anxiety, would 100% recommend CBD over THC.
for sure.
So that's, but like if you can't, you can't use that though if you have certain medications, other ones that you're taking. So both THC and CBD. So it's both of them that we need to talk about.
Interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, bro, because especially now where CBD is like mainstream now,
Mhm.
and is marketed as this completely safe substance that can relieve your anxiety, your inflammation, your pain, etc. But I never thought about that CBD also does not pair well with particular medications, and people for sure don't know that.
Yeah, man. And
And
what they
that's
don't,
yeah.
one of the main things, man, is that CBD. So like CBD is metabolized by an enzyme that is used with like to also metabolize a bunch of other drugs. So
Mm,
if you're taking them both at one time, the enzyme really has to choose, like which one it's going to metabolize. So if it
mm,
metabolizes only one, it can increase the effects of, so
yeah,
like if it only metabolizes CBD, it can increase the effects of the other medication that you're taking, and you
right,
can feel like you're out of whack because that medication is a lot stronger. But that's just because it's not being broken down. So
right.
yeah, man. Yeah, I could just, so yeah, we'll go ahead and
Yeah, that's a deep dive on that, right? So
yeah,
we're
man.
talking about ratios and
Yeah, man.
the
Yeah.
effectiveness of enzymes breaking down particular molecules. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah, man. It gets deep, man. It gets deep. It's so fascinating.
I'm looking forward to that because that's where my knowledge and skill set is a little limited. I'm not familiar with the deep dive scientific breakdown of that. And we need to tap into that ASAP for sure.
Yeah, man. And then another thing, like, I definitely want to come back and we can talk about that. But so I think I've even mentioned this to you, but so like I was after I graduated from the University of Maryland with my master's degree, I wanted to develop a course, right? And then
Yeah.
have that available for people to purchase and
Yes,
all of those
indeed.
different things. But after like sitting with myself after graduation and thinking about it, I'm actually just going to do something similar, but something that's more accessible to everybody that they don't have to like pay for.
Right.
So really, I'm going to start this animated series on YouTube about everything that I'm talking about, but just break it down in simple manners,
Yeah.
and then just have it available for everybody to kind of seek that knowledge. And I definitely intend to get deep like I just did. You know what I mean? Like just
Yes.
dive deep into a lot of different areas of cannabis that I find very fascinating. That I hope people, will gravitate towards and appreciate.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait for that animated series to drop. There will certainly be a link to it on the Cannabis Media Collective platform, 100%, because that's what we need to do. We need to make the science understandable for the average citizen, right?
Yeah, that's my goal.
Because at the end of the day, man, and we can close out on this, man, this plant has the ability to improve the quality of life of human beings across their entire lifespan, right? So, although we talked about college students using it the most, the reality is, man, we've got parents out there who are struggling with children that are dealing with autism, epilepsy, and you name how many pediatric disorders that are just ruining people's lives, right? Then we can
Yeah,
step into adolescence, then adulthood, in geriatric medicine, right? A lot of people are saying the newest cannabis consumers are over 60, right?
yeah.
And
That's
so
no, I was just saying that's the fastest growing population right now.
fastest
People,
growing population. Absolutely. And so most of these new consumers coming to the cannabis market are not familiar with cannabis. They're not connoisseurs and your neighborhood head shop owners that are sharing this information. So listen, man, thank you so much. We got to get our next interview on the calendar. We're gonna tap in on substances that do not pair well. We won't even say medication. We'll just say substances. Period.
Yeah, yeah, substances, period. Yeah.
That do not pair well with cannabis, because I think that conversation is not had enough, for
Hmm.
sure. Um, but thank you, Justin, for joining us today, man. So informative. Everybody out there. But before we end, Justin, tell people who want to reach out and tap in with you. How do they find you? How do they reach you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, yeah. So my email, just that's something I'm very responsive to. It's just jbuck, so JBUCK at pearlrolling.com. So that's pearlrolling.com is if you're interested in buying some of our patented rolling papers. That's where you can find them. We're also on Amazon. So if you just type in Pearl Rolling Papers on Amazon, you can purchase them there. But yeah, so jbuck at pearlrolling.com is where you can contact me. Our Instagram, the company's Instagram is Pearl Rolling Co. So Pearl Rolling Co. Co at the end. And then my personal Instagram is just jbuck13. So any of those avenues, you DM us, email us. I'll be receptive and happy to have conversations with anybody who's interested.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for joining us, Justin. I'm about to twist one right after we commence this interview, and as you say, pearled it. and
Yeah, man.
man, thank you for joining us, and everybody stay tuned for the next episode where we tap into substances that do not pair well with cannabis.
Thanks
That's
for having me, Michael. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you for joining me.